video, I talked about why innovation matters, and why familiarity does too. Why sometimes the best thing a long-running series can do isn't reinvent itself, but remember what made people fall in love with it in the first place. So when Nintendo quietly dropped Fire Emblem Path of Radiance onto the Switch Online expansion pack, the timing felt perfect. A beloved Fire Emblem game locked away on the GameCube for years, suddenly playable again, and in handheld form, much to my delight. Right as we're looking ahead to Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave and asking what the future of the series should look like. I subscribed to NSO just for this game, jumped in live, and started streaming my first hours with Path of Radiance. And what surprised me wasn't just how well it holds up in 2026, it was how alive it felt. Playing alongside longtime Fire Emblem fans, sharing the tension of permadeath, reacting to close calls together, this didn't feel like revisiting an old game. It felt like discovering a timeless classic for the very first time. This isn't a full review, just my first impressions. But already, Path of Radiance is a powerful reminder that simplicity, when done right, resonates and endures, even for decades. Hey friends, I'm Autumn. Welcome back to Cozy Cartridges, your channel for reflections on calm, nostalgic, and handheld gaming experiences. If that sounds like your vibe, grab your favorite snack or drink, get comfy, and let's talk about Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. From its opening hours, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance establishes a story that feels grounded, personal, and quietly confident. Rather than beginning with grand prophecies or ancient evils, the game introduces you to Ike, not as a hero, but as the newest member of his father's mercenary company, the Grail Mercenaries. Ike is the son of Grail, a respected mercenary leader, and the early chapters are intentionally small in scale. You take on modest jobs within the borders of Crimea, helping locals deal with bandits and unrest. These early missions do more than teach mechanics, they establish tone. This is a world where conflict feels local and human, and where the consequences of violence are immediately visible. It's an approach that makes the later escalation feel earned rather than abrupt. As the story unfolds, the political landscape expands naturally. Crimea is a nation of humans known as Beork, and it shares a tense border with Gallia, a nation of Equas.
Look, guys, why does it look like an I? Oh, it's just a lowercase L. Oh my gosh. I thought the entire time that it was Iagas or something. I didn't realize it was a lowercase L and not an uppercase I.
These are humanoids capable of transforming into animals. Even early on, the game quietly introduces themes of prejudice, mistrust, and cultural divide through character interactions and offhand dialogue. Everything changes when the neighboring Beork nation of Dane launches a brutal invasion of Crimea. The fall of the capital is swift and devastating, and suddenly the mercenaries are no longer operating on the fringes of conflict. They are caught directly in its path. What makes all of this work so well, even in the early hours, is how vividly the characters come through. The members of the Grail Mercenaries feel like a found family, each with distinct personalities that emerge through support conversations, battlefield banter, and story scenes. There's a warmth here that contrasts beautifully with the rising tension of the plot. You aren't just moving pieces across the map, you're guiding people who matter to one another. That sense of camaraderie, paired with the looming threat of war, gives Path of Radiance an emotional foundation that feels incredibly strong, even in the early game. For a game that embraces simplicity in its systems, the storytelling is anything but shallow. It's clear, purposeful, and deeply character-driven, and it's easy to see why so many Fire Emblem fans hold this entry in such high regard. From a gameplay perspective, Path of Radiance feels refreshingly straightforward. You move from chapter to chapter with a clear sense of progression, punctuated by brief story scenes and preparation phases that let you check in with your army. There's no overwhelming number of side systems, no endless menus layered on top of one another, or, well, a la Three Houses, tea parties. Instead, the game focuses on the essentials: unit placement, weapon choices, and thoughtful preparation before each battle. That simplicity makes it incredibly easy to settle into a rhythm, especially during longer sessions. Playing this on stream has been particularly enjoyable because of that pacing. The structure leaves room for conversation, for reacting with chat, and for talking through decisions without feeling rushed. It's calm to
Check the manage option. What does this do? Bonus experience? Oh no, go ahead. You can tell me the name of your favorite character. If you want to reset, we need a specific unit to recruit C hard. Oh no. Okay.
It's calm, deliberate, and surprisingly cozy for a game where every move can have permanent consequences. Just make sure to save frequently. Combat in Path of Radiance is classic Fire Emblem in the best way possible. It's turn-based, grid-based, and deeply methodical with a strong emphasis on positioning, terrain advantages, and unit matchups. The familiar weapon triangle, sword beats axe, axe beats lance, lance beats sword, quietly governs every encounter, encouraging you to think a few turns ahead and rewarding careful planning over a reckless aggression. There's no flashiness for the sake of flash here. Every animation and exchange communicates something useful, reinforcing clarity and intention. That structure naturally shapes how you play. You're constantly balancing offense and defense, keeping an eye on enemy weapon types and making sure your stronger units are positioned to protect weaker ones. Early recruits and fragile characters can't simply be thrown into danger, and potential new allies often need to be kept alive if you want to get them to join your army. That pressure adds an extra layer of thought to each map, turning what might otherwise be straightforward encounters into careful, deliberate puzzles. And then there's permadeath. Even knowing that resets are always an option, the presence of permadeath fundamentally changes how you approach every decision. Every risky move carries tension, and every miscalculation feels heavier. On stream, that tension is amplified. Victories feel shared, and mistakes feel genuinely painful. What I love most is how the system naturally encourages attachment. You come to know your units not as stat blocks, but as characters whose survival depends entirely on your choices. At one point, I promised everyone I would go back after the stream and redo a map to keep Mia alive. And I did. I leave no man behind. One of the biggest takes away from my first impressions is how confident Path of Radiance is in its simplicity. It isn't a game trying to be everything at once. It knows its core loop, and it executes it well. And it also trusts that to be enough. After spending time with some more experimental or system-heavy RPGs recently, returning to something this focused was genuinely comforting. It reinforces the idea I talked about in my last video, that familiarity isn't a flaw for longtime franchises, it's a feature. Path of Radiance doesn't feel outdated, it feels timeless. Even just a few hours in, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance has been an absolute joy to return to, or in my case, to experience and discover for the very first time. Its clear but emotional storytelling, deliberate pacing, and high-stakes combat make it incredibly easy to sink into, especially when shared with a community that loves this franchise just as much as I do. These are still early impressions, and I'm excited to see how the story, characters, and systems continue to develop. But so far, this has been a perfect reminder of why Fire Emblem's foundations are so strong, and why not every game needs to reinvent itself to feel meaningful. Sometimes doing what you do best is more than enough. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you played Fire Emblem Path of Radiance? Or are you going to check it out through the GameCube expansion? Or what is your favorite Fire Emblem game? I think I've told a couple of people before, but mine are Three Houses and Shadows of Valencia. However, I'd love to hear what yours are. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications for weekly cozy game content. And if you'd like to come hang out with me while I'm working my way through this game, I would love to see you in a stream. Until next time, may your crits be powerful, your units stay strong, and may your favorite franchises stay comforting.